This is the Year on WURD, a look back at some of the most insightful interviews, conversations, and news coverage from 2025. We're proud to have made it through this year with you. And to be honest, 2025 has not been easy. It hasn't been easy for WURD either. Attacks on DEI, the free press, and Black history and culture have created a perfect storm for organizations like WURD that sit in the intersection of media and Black community empowerment, both of which are under intense threat right now. This is translated into fewer and fewer resources to do this incredibly important work. But we're still here. And that's because of the support of our listeners, our community, our corporate partners, and the people who believe in independent media. So take a breath with us and enjoy the Year on WURD as we look back at some of the moments that shaped 2025. To listen to the full interviews featured here, visit WURDradio.com/year on WURD. In January, Donald Trump's second presidential term began, setting the tone for what would become a turbulent year. Here's Wake Up with WURD host Solomon Jones in conversation with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich.
We are joined now by Newt Gingrich. He has a new documentary called Journey to America with Newt and Callista Gingrich. So do you find it ironic that, you're talking about crime and criminals and where you have an incoming president who has 34 felony convictions? I mean, technically, he's a criminal, too.
Yeah,
do you think what's the difference?
That's garbage. I can't believe you'd even say that.
I do.
Total garbage.
How so?
No, it's total garbage.
How so?
Because the judge is a deeply biased Democrat. Virtually every independent attorney has said the charges are baloney. This whole thing is a political charade, and there's no comparison. I mean, you're just spouting the Democratic Party line.
No, actually, I'm just asking a question that I really have for myself.
Well, I'm telling you for yourself then that this is a totally phony conviction.
Oh, it's phony.
That a substantial number of Americans rejected it completely, voted for him to be president, and he's going to be president.
February brought much better news for Philadelphians as the entire city celebrated the Eagles winning the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs.
The best known in the Black community for The Best Man, Boys in the Hood, and so many other great feature films. Morris Chestnut, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you, man, especially after the Eagles Super Bowl when I saw you on with Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp setting them straight about Jalen Hurts. As a lifetime Eagles fan, I want to thank you, brother.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Congratulations. Yeah, we took it down. I'm glad for Jalen Hurts first and foremost because people can get off his back. Mm-hmm. And Saquon Barkley and just the whole team.
In 2025, WURD helped shine a light on small business owners and helped drive real results, building the Black agenda. Led by Solomon Jones, delivered profits for multiple businesses, and WURD's annual Level Up Pitch competition showcased women who are building companies and legacies. Here's the winner of 2025's Level Up competition, Dr. Nicole Rayfield of Polish Me Unbothered.
Her brand is much more than nail polish. There are many nail polishes on the market, but hers is a movement. Born from her doctoral research on the experiences of Black and brown women in majority-led spaces, Polish Me Unbothered turns color into confidence, creativity, and communication. Polish Me Unbothered was born out of your doctoral research. What was that moment when you said, I'm going to turn this research into a brand that celebrates and heals at the same time?
So it comes to a point where you've done so much research and you've heard so many stories from your participants. And then one day you wake up and you realize you could be one of your participants. And so my father once told me that it's not one big cut that will get you, it's a million little cuts. And I think that one day back in January of this year, I just had my last little cut where something, within my career space just didn't hit right. And I was sitting outside the nail salon, and that was what I was going to do to pamper myself and make myself feel a little bit better. I was in a conversation with a good friend who's also getting she was still getting her doctoral degree. And I said, I wish they had a color that really reflected what I felt right now. And just jokingly, I said something like, you got the right one, red. And then she laughed, and then I laughed, just like you're laughing. And by the time the conversation was over, 20 different names had come to my mind. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to be polished and unbothered. And I just decided to start the company and create my own set of nail polish with names and formulas that were safe for us, and names that resonated with who we are as Black and brown and otherwise down women in the workplace. So that's my origin story.
I love that. I love that, because these are how things come up, right? You see a need, and our job is to fill that void.
WURD will always be the foundation. That's why we have an ongoing, never expiring coupon on our website, WURD20, 20% off anything you buy. So all your listeners, go onto the site. It became a catalyst because other business owners gravitate towards me and say, how did you do this? How did you do that? Who are you connected to? And I'm able to network people and support people. And a lot of spaces that I go in, I'm the only one that looks like me as a vendor. And then one or two other folks that look like me come in, and they come to the table. Oh my gosh, I love your display. I love this. I love that. And I don't gatekeep. This is where I got it from. This is how I did it. Here's the coupon. Let me help you consult with your business, how to sell what you're selling. I don't have any competition. We're all partners in this. Yeah, I have no competition other than my next best version of myself.
As Philadelphia prepares to host people from around the world, WURD spent time talking with hometown heroes about what it meant to welcome the world, Philly style, with soul.
Yo, I am so excited to introduce my next guest, two-time Grammy Award-winning, legendary DJ from West Philadelphia, DJ Jazzy Jeff. Welcome to Evening Words, good brother.
Yeah, thank you for that, man.
Man, listen, bro, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come on to this program. It's an exciting time for the city of Philadelphia. 2026 is an exciting time for the city of Philadelphia. Next year, we are one of the cities hosting the FIFA World Cup. And I want you to tell us about this process, Jeff. Like, so, FIFA is like worldwide. You're worldwide, yes, but yes. FIFA is worldwide, bro.
That's the world.
That's the world. And they, Philly is a world-class city, so they say, hey, we're going to do Philly. How do they realize, how do they understand the significance of tapping you to put together the music for this sonic piece that this is going to be played across all platforms as a part of their promotional campaign? How did that whole process work? How did the call come through?
Well, I think because they were doing it in 16 cities, and everybody wanted to kind of the whole idea was to put your city's thumbprint on the Sonic ID. Mm-hmm. I was extremely honored that I got a call to say, hey, can you do this? And then I felt it was my responsibility, knowing how big the World Cup is, knowing that the entire world is about to have a nice amount of time in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I needed to make sure that the soundtrack was going to be right. So it was really important to just, if asking what is our sonic idea, it starts with Gamble and Huff and the sound of Philadelphia. It goes to the neo soul movement in the 90s with Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, Floetry. It's with the Roots. Philadelphia is soul. So I wanted to make sure that we captured not only the soul in the music, but the soul of the city.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about Summertime for a minute?
Yes.
Can you take us back into the studio sessions for Summertime? I mean, there's a lot of songs you've produced or cut on. You're one of the most extraordinary turntablists in hip hop culture. A lot of songs you've produced and been a part of that resonate and that, are perennial hits. Obviously, Summertime in Philadelphia somehow captured a moment that just will last forever. But what was it like? We'll talk a little bit about the making of that. And what was that like, in studio as you were preparing for that, for that particular song?
Will was in LA missing Philly. He's calling me and saying, hey, what's up? And I'm like, yo, it was 75 degrees today. I took my car to the car wash. I went outside. I saw a whole bunch of people that looked completely different from the winter into the spring.
Right.
It is really popping here. And he missed it so much. That's what he wrote about.
Wow.
Like, it was as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like if Will was in Philly, we would have never given you Summertime.
Wow.
Looking ahead to 2026, WURD launched Ready, Set, Grow, a year-long initiative focused on making sure small entrepreneurs benefit from tourism and major events coming to the city. You're about to hear from WURD Radio President and CEO Sarah Lomax, followed by Angela Val, President and CEO of Visit Philadelphia, from the Ready, Set, Grow launch at the Barnes Foundation.
We are launching today here at the Barnes a year-long initiative that we're calling Ready, Set, Grow. And a lot of people have heard about all the tourism, all the activities that are coming to Philly in 2026. It's the semi-quincentennial, and I have mastered saying semi-quincentennial. It's the 250th birthday of the nation. There are so many things that are coming in addition to the birthday festivities. FIFA, the World Cup is coming. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game is coming. The PGA Golf Tournament is coming. March Madness is going to be here. And that's not even all of the things. There's like a host of other things that aren't kind of on that big, humongous radar. And we're going to hear about those major events, as well as other things that are coming to the city that we should know about. But the biggest point of Ready, Set, Grow is it's really focused on businesses, Black businesses, small, diverse businesses, and how we get ready for all of this business opportunity coming into the city in 2026.
You had mentioned, Sarah, that some of these businesses are small, mom and pop, right? You might have a shop where you sell some goods. You might, have a pizza place, restaurant, something like that in a neighborhood. For those folks specifically, what I would say to you is people need to be able to find you. So you have to really make sure that your location is correct on your website, that you are showing up on all of these map apps, especially the ones that are now in people's cars. You want to make sure that your hours are correct. You want to make sure that you have pictures about your place, the products that you sell, that you have a very clear message around why somebody should buy that t-shirt from you as opposed to buying it from someone else. I think if you have the opportunity with a few dollars, $50, to do some SEO so that you start showing up in some of these organic searches a little bit more often during that time, you want to do that. People are looking for what they want to do in these days in the moment that they're in. And they're just scrolling to say, I'm hungry now. How far am I from this? I'm down here. What else is here? You want to take advantage of that. I think there'll be a lot going on throughout the year, but you will see that most people are going to be here in that June and July time period. So you really want to be able to focus and pay attention to when all these events are announced of what that calendar looks like so that you can make sure that you are staffing appropriately. Do not overdo it. This is not going to be the year where you're going to make so much money that you are going to open up another shop in another neighborhood or franchise it. You're going to have a really good year. And for those businesses that are in this procurement bucket, you might have the opportunity to get an experience, even if you partner with someone, in a big event that will allow you later on to be part of another big event that happens in this region or in another region someplace else. The experience is just as important as the money.
In 2025, civil rights icon Jesse Jackson's health began to decline. We took time to reflect on the legacy of this towering figure, what his leadership meant to generations of Americans, and how his work can still inspire those seeking justice and equality today.
Joining us now is Abby Phillips. She's the anchor of CNN's Newsnight with Abby Phillips. She has a new book on the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Abby, welcome to the show. How do you think Jesse Jackson looks at this moment now when the Voting Rights Act that he worked so hard for and so many others gave their lives for is under attack.
Yeah, I've had, honestly, many a conversation with him in recent years about where we are as a country and the erosion of rights and this sort of backlash moment that we're in about diversity and even, frankly, democracy. And I think he was deeply troubled by it. I mean, he told me so. I think he felt that the country was at a sort of a critical point where we had to figure out a way to talk to one another about the values that he spent most of his decades in public life fighting for. I do think, though, that Jesse Jackson understands that cycle of progress, and you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Yeah. I mean, that happened in the 70s and the 80s when, there was a sense in the early 80s. There's a scene in the book where I talk about how Ronald Reagan actually came to see Jesse Jackson in the early 80s to basically maybe try to get an endorsement. Yeah. And then a couple days later went and did a rally in a sort of hotbed for the KKK, sending, what Jesse Jackson thought was a really strong signal that he was sending, messages to the worst of American society, the racists who were still around and are still around, frankly, but were still around in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so this was decades after Dr. King, more than a decade after Dr. King was killed, and yet still they were pushing back on this stuff in the 80s. So he gets the backlash, and that's why he really has never wanted to kind of move into retirement. I mean, he's in his 80s. He's in his 80s right now, and he still thinks about this stuff, still is active on this stuff, even while his health is failing. So I think he still thinks that there's a lot of work left to be done.
Indeed, there is much work to be done. Throughout 2025, WURD continued to show up as a defender of democracy. That role became especially clear in the fight to preserve the President's House, one of the most important Black historic sites in the country. Here's WURD host Michael Cord speaking about that fight at WURD's 2025 Founders Day.
Back in 2002, 23 years ago, a group of angry Black folks began fighting the good fight. We found out, one, that the Liberty Bell Center was moving from 5th and Market to 6th and Market. Why? Because it was too cramped, too crowded, too congested there. It went to 6th and Market. Big deal. We find out 6th and Market back in 1790 was America's first White House. It was known as the President's House, Executive Mansion, Robert Morris Mansion, but it served as America's first White House. Okay, interesting, but no big deal. All in 2002. But the third thing we found out is that George Washington, the president of this country, enslaved 9 Black men, women, and children at America's first White House right here in Philadelphia from 1790 to 1797. So Black folks found out about this in 2002. We organized, we protested, we demonstrated, we agitated, we did everything that needed to be done for 8 straight years. We then get to December 15, 2010. The grand opening of the first, I repeat, the first slavery memorial of its kind on federal property in the history of the United States of America. That was a great victory until it wasn't. And it wasn't 15 years later. In January of 2025, the guy in the White House issued dozens of executive orders. I don't need to go through them all. Suffice it to say, it was anti-Blackness. Fast forward to March of 2025, where the president said, hey, there are federal sites around the country that, quote, inappropriately disparage, unquote, Americans past and present. This is March of 2025. Fast forward to May of 2025, the guy he appointed in the Interior Department, a guy named Doug Burgum, targeted Philadelphia, targeted 6th and Market, targeted the Slavery Memorial, and threatened that on September 17, they could shut it down. Well, September 17 came and went, and it didn't get shut down. Why? Because of WURD and the Philadelphia Tribune agitating. And based on all that, we fought the good fight. Now we have a three-pronged strategy. We have an activist strategy, we have a political strategy, and we have a legal strategy.
In 2026, WURD Radio launches Freedom Journeys, a year-long project honoring 250 phenomenal Philadelphians who helped shape this city and this country. Every day we'll share stories of people whose names you may know, and many you should, from freedom fighters to artists to educators, organizers, and everyday leaders. Freedom Journeys is about reclaiming history, telling our own stories, and making sure our contributions aren't erased or forgotten. You'll hear a new Freedom Journey story each day on WURD Radio and across our digital platforms. Learn more at wurdradio.com/Freedom Journeys. You're listening to The Year on WURD. There was a lot happening nationally in 2025, and a lot of it impacted people here in Pennsylvania. We spoke with people to help make sense of what was happening and to give some context to the moment. Here are Governor Josh Shapiro on federal funding cuts, national security expert Nola Haynes on international developments, and Angela Rye on movement building.
All right, we're talking with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro around a number of issues. One of the issues, of course, that is looming large over all of us is the change of administration at the federal level. The Trump administration now in place. They are doing a number of things that I think affect us as a state, including cutting funding in a number of different areas that are key to the survival of people here in Philadelphia and across Pennsylvania. What can the state do to push back against these funding cuts and other policies that the Trump administration is putting in place?
Yeah, look, Solomon, I think I live by three letters, GSD. We focus on getting stuff done every day. That's my job as governor, whether it's mass transit, as you and I just talked about, or education, safety, creating jobs. I just landed the largest private sector investment in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Amazon's going to be investing $20 billion in our Commonwealth. And in your listening area, that includes a new data center in Bucks County. So we're talking massive investments and real wins on economic development. So my focus is on getting stuff done. But I've made it very clear from the day after the election that I'm ready to work with anybody, including the president, if they're focused on delivering for Pennsylvania. But I've also said, if they do anything to mess with a Pennsylvanian, they do anything to hurt a Pennsylvanian, they're going to have to go through me, and I will stand up for my Commonwealth against the president or anyone else. We have seen this president illegally cut billions of dollars of funding from Pennsylvania, from our veterans, from our school kids, from our farmers, just to name a few, from our food banks, including Share in Philadelphia and others. I have taken the president to court. I have filed a lawsuit on behalf of Pennsylvanians multiple times when the president's illegally taken away our funding. And guess what, Solomon? I've won every single time and restored the funding to our Commonwealth.
Joining us now, a friend of the show, Dr. Nola Haynes. She's a former adjunct senior fellow for the Technology and National Security Program at the Center for a New American Security and served in the Biden-Harris administration as a member of the International Security Advisory Board at the U.S. Department of State. I want to talk about what's happening with our military and the strikes on Venezuela. One of the things that's been in the news lately is Pete Hegseth and an admiral, and who gave the order to do a second strike on a boat that was defenseless in the water with two people clinging to the side. As you've watched this play out, what have been your thoughts on that situation?
People are talking about this in terms of potential war crimes. Mm-hmm. And so my hot take is this. It actually isn't a war crime because no formal declaration of war has been declared. Now, why does that matter? Mm-hmm. Am I just getting into semantics? Am I just being a professor? It matters because by calling it a war crime, there's an implication that there is some level of legal cover. Venezuela nor America has declared war. Right. So what we are talking about are extrajudicial killings, i.e. murder of citizens. This is why this matters. when there's a formal declaration of war, you can go to war, enemy combatants are killed, right? That is what war is. People die. That is an accepted fact. Now, what isn't accepted is when civilians are killed in conflict or war, right? But what we are talking about with these boat strikes are civilians, because last I checked, anybody declare war. So you are killing civilians. We're not talking about enemy combatants. That is a big, big problem here, Solomon. And that is the issue. People aren't talking about it that way, but that's essentially what people are angry and upset about, because we are talking about civilians. We don't have evidence, even when this administration, quote unquote, attempted to brief the Democrats, and ranking member Meeks was talking about this on Threads on his social media. This administration offered nothing in terms of actual details and real proof as to why this is happening. So.
Yeah.
Welcome to this program, Miss Angela Rye, award-winning host, social justice advocate, legal analyst, justice advocate, all the things. For folks in our listening audience who are not familiar with the State of the People movement, can you give us a breakdown of that movement and how you all took it across the country and why it was important for that to be the response in this particular moment?
Yeah, I think for me, the Power Tour was an embodied love letter to our people. It was to show our people who have been feeling like they're in harm's way, because they've been, that we see you and we care about what you need, and we're here to meet it as best we can. It was by design, like on the pieces that you worked on, Dr. James, it was on the Black Papers Policy Initiative that says we're worthy of demands. We're worthy of telling people what the state of Black America is, and we're worthy of making demands as a result of that, of our current state. It was about connecting us to resource and connecting us to one another through organization, person to person, and through coalition building, which is what is going to take for us to sustain ourselves right now. Like, this is an era of emergency. You know, it couldn't be more urgent times. And just thinking about the fact that in July, so 7 months in, this man, almost 7 months in, has rolled back our civil rights progress of the last 60 years in a matter of 6 and 7 months. That's a scary place to be. And I think what is worse is that we have not established or mounted an adequate defense. And so I feel like what we're doing is issuing a clarion call to say, in order for us to sustain, survive, thrive, we have to, those of us who are capable and feel called and have the talents, the commitment, the time, the treasure to do this, be the first responders of the movement. We don't get to sit this out. You know, I have my Harriet Tubman chain on, and I wear this to remind myself that I don't get to quit on somebody that didn't go on the 1st or the 15th or the 16th time. Maybe they don't go on the 19th time. But we have an obligation to liberate ourselves. And we have the tools. We stand on shoulders of giants who've done it before. So I still have demands of this government as a taxpayer, as someone who worked, for the federal government on Capitol Hill. I still have demands of it, but I also have requirements of ourselves. So we have a pledge. We ask people to sign on to that pledge. Some agreements. We ask people to sign on to those agreements, and come where you feel called. Like, come on, we got enough room for all of us. We need everybody right now.
We also partnered with our sister station, WVON, for a live simulcast on ICE raids in Chicago and potential National Guard deployments, giving our listeners a real-world look at what that moment felt like and what it might look like if it ever came to Philadelphia.
I am super excited about this moment and this simulcast, folks. Times are tense in Chicago, where ICE has been a steady presence and drew the nation's attention after a September 30th raid on an apartment building in the city's South Shore neighborhood. Residents, including children and elderly residents, Black and brown, reported being pulled out of their homes in the middle of the night and having helicopters swoop down on the building. The president has tried to deploy National Guard troops from Texas to Chicago, ostensibly to protect ICE. While that move has been blocked by an appeals court judge, the Guard is still stationed just outside Chicago. In the meantime, residents across the city are resisting ICE as they witness behaviors that many call flagrantly abusive and even unconstitutional. Today, we are here with our close friends on the ground in Chicago, two media outlets serving as the eyes, ears, and voice of Chicago's Black community. WVON is our sister station in Chicago, and The Tribe is a news publication that reshapes narratives of Black Chicago. We will be in conversation with WVON's Afternoon Drive host, Atiba Buchanan and LaDonna Ray, and the editor-in-chief of The Tribe, Tiffany Walden. But I do want to go to you first, Tiffany, if you don't mind. Right before we went to break and set up this simulcast, I was sharing excerpts from a piece that you all ran earlier this week at The Tribe. The headline is Feds Gas Chicago Neighborhood, Detain Young Black Man Amid Day of Southeast Side Raids. It's by Dave Burns and Tanya Hill. And Tiffany, I mean, the reporting here is incredible, right? But it's revealing like the chaos that unfolds when you have these masked federal agents unchecked in our communities. Can you talk a little bit about the reporting in that piece and some of the things that you and your team are seeing on the ground in Chicago right now?
For sure. So the immigration raids from the Trump administration has been going on in Chicago for more than a month now. And we've been covering it day to day and looking into the patterns that ICE is using to snatch people and disappear people from off the streets of the Chicagoland area. I also want to emphasize that this is not just happening in Chicago. It started off happening in our suburban band of towns and villages that are outside of the city, and then they started working their way into the city. So now you have this kind of this activity that's happening simultaneously across multiple parts of the Chicagoland area. And what happened yesterday in Chicago was on the southeast side of the city, where our reporter, Tonya Hill, went out to cover some of the unrest that was taking place with those militarized federal agents being in the area. And while she was there, they had already been deploying tear gas into the neighborhood. And this is a residential community.
That is chemical warfare. For folks listening, that's chemical warfare. Literally, if you're tear gassing civilian neighborhoods and there's not an absolute urgent need to do so, that's literally chemical warfare in our city. Sorry to interrupt you, Tiffany. Just want to make that point.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point to make. And when Tonya got out there, they deployed more tear gas into the community. And I've seen different angles of videos of what happened out there. Tonya, of course, took video showing them throwing tear gas canisters at, community residents and people who are protesting the actions. But also I've seen video angles where there's an infant, like there's two people carrying an infant in a car seat, running away from the tear gas that's been deployed. And so they're not just deploying this against, protesters or in some type of controlled protest area. Again, this is like a neighborhood with homes and with people with children present.
Closer to home, WURD was in the middle of some of the most important local conversations. We were the only media outlet to broadcast the debate between district attorney candidates Larry Krasner and Pat Dugan. We dug into the SEPTA funding crisis, and we consistently brought local leaders on air to answer your questions.
I read an article in the Northeast Times that says there's a well-funded effort to have my opponent, former Judge Pat Dugan, be the Republican candidate. I said the Republican candidate if he does not win in the Democratic primary through a write-in effort. I can tell you I have no reservation in saying that as a lifelong Democrat, I would never run as a Republican, nor would I want to be endorsed by Republicans. And there have been donors, there have been petition signers, There apparently is an independent expenditure group, which means big money, behind an effort to have Judge Dugan, if he should not win the Democratic primary, be the Republican candidate. So I think we need to know as Democrats from you, Judge Dugan, I'm going to ask you to answer this during our remarks. Will you ever run for office as a Republican? Or will you commit that you will never run for office as a Republican?
Judge Dugan, as you prepare your rebuttal response here, can you answer the district attorney's question about whether or not you can commit to remaining on one side of the political aisle? Are you going to run as a Republican if you lose this primary?
I am not running as a Republican. I'm running as a Democrat. If other people are trying to do something, I have nothing to do with that.
I want to just frame the discussion because we're here because SEPTA is facing a $213 million budget deficit. If the transit agency doesn't get additional funding, a first round of severe cuts will go into effect August 24th, followed by a fare increase in September. SEPTA also warns that further cuts, including the elimination of regional rail routes and a 9 p.m. curfew on the L and Broad Street lines, could happen on January 1st. They're proposing a 21.5% fare increase across all types of transportation, which would make it among the most expensive in the U.S. Cost of rides are going to depend on the method of payment, but base fare for buses, metro, and trolley rides will rise from $250 to $290 for riders who pay in cash. Scott Sauer, I want to start with you, and I want to ask you just a very simple question. Given the extent of this budget deficit that you're facing, didn't SEPTA see this coming, and why wasn't SEPTA prepared?
Well, thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. The truth of the matter is we did see it coming. We foretold this over 2 years ago, and the preparation to try to help ourselves. I mean, that started a long time ago. We have been trying to help ourselves in many, many different ways, and the truth of that is we are among the most efficient transit agencies in the country. But beyond that, we're a state-funded agency. We are not a for-profit business. We're a utility for the region. So we depend on government subsidies to run, and there's no amount of efficiencies that we could do to plug a $213 million gap in our operating budget.
So in terms of what you've been doing to prepare, I mean, could you explain to our listeners what you've been doing to prepare for this $213 million deficit?
Sure. I mean, we started several years ago. We started what we called an efficiency and accountability program. And this is where we solicited ideas internally to look for ways that we could achieve even more efficiencies than what we were already achieving. And we just released a report 2 years after that program started, released a report last week where we announced $91 million in efficiencies that we were able to come up with. In addition to that, we put in a number of austerity measures in the last year to try to curtail the deficit as much as possible. We've frozen management pay. We've frozen hiring on non-operations and non-safety sensitive positions. We've reduced reliance on contractors and consultants, eliminated travel, eliminated temps and co-ops. We've done a number of things, everything we can think of to make ourselves lean. And actually, it's through all this effort that got us to just $213 million in an operating deficit.
So there's been some criticism that it should focus more on those on the low end in terms of income. Does it focus enough on low income people who need housing?
I want to get right to your question because that criticism that you referenced, this is what it's directly correlated to. 40% of the beneficiaries will be in the deeply affordable category. But this is a holistic approach. We can't forget about the work that our good friend, and quite frankly, we don't even know what we have in him as public housing authorities, across the nation are searching for leaders. We have the best in Kelvin Jeremiah, who has redefined what public housing is. It's not the public housing that my grandparents lived in Richard Allen homes at 12th and Poplar. Public housing is different. So we are doing our best to make sure that we don't leave a constituency out, and particularly those who are in most need. And I would not do that, Solomon. That goes against the core of my being. And forgetting who I am and where I come from, that's not a part of my calculus as being mayor.
I want to ask about Market East, because we know that there is a plan that you are looking to craft around what happens at Market East. The Sixers were supposed to do an arena there. They did not. There was a lot of pushback there. Do you expect to see the same kind of protests around whatever you come up with for Market East and that area?
Hey, Solomon, you've heard me say this before. Comprehensive approach. We're not going to leave any idea or any thoughts about what could potentially be as we work to bring a revival back to Market East from City Hall to the river. But I also want to be clear about this. And you heard me say this before, so nothing about this is new, particularly for the WURD audience. The people, I'm talking about now the residents. I'm not just talking about Market East as our historic first commercial quarter. I'm talking about it as a residential community. Those communities who will be directly impacted by any activity there, they have a right, should have a right, and have a voice in what happens there.
If you missed anything live on WURD Radio this week, the Week on WURD has you covered. The podcast brings together some of the most informative and thought-provoking interviews from across the station. Conversations that help you understand what's happening and why it matters. You can catch up with the Week on WURD on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow, like, and share the podcast, and make sure WURD is part of the conversation. In one of the year's most painful stories, the city of Philadelphia mourned the tragic loss of 23-year-old Kata Scott, a bright young woman whose life was taken too soon. 21-year-old Keon King has been accused of killing her. We spoke with District Attorney Larry Krasner about how authorities handle cases involving repeat offenders and the risks those failures pose to women and communities.
Recently, of course, the Kata Scott case, there was someone who had charges who ended up back on the street. You since recharged him. You know, I guess my question is, how do you determine who gets charged, who gets released, and who does not?
Well, you know, obviously, it is not just a question of my determining who gets released. For example, when we talk about bail, some people believe the DA's office sets bail. We don't set bail. Bail is set by judges. All that we get to do is make our argument. And for example, in the Kata Scott case, we wanted a much higher bail than the young man, now charged as a killer, got. We tried really hard to get a much higher bail. That bail would have kept him in custody, and if it kept him in custody, he would not have been in a position to kill her. So it simply is not the case. And I understand people are not lawyers. It's not their job to know my business. But it simply is not the case that we have complete control over all of these things. That's not to say we don't have a role. We have a very important role. We get it right a lot. Sometimes we don't. That's the truth. I'd rather tell the truth than tell a pretty lie. But that's the truth. You know, we're not always going to get it right. My friends in the police department are not always going to get it right. And judges and juries are not always going to get it right. This is just kind of what happens. But, you know, if people want to criticize us because we go back to look at his cases, knowing that he was not an honest broker, knowing that he was used in a position for criminal purposes rather than to actually solve crimes, well, I'm not really hearing that one either. You know, the system has to have integrity where people won't believe in it and they won't participate in it as victims, as witnesses, etc. But, you know, having said that, we are all in this business. It's a tough one. It's a little bit like medicine, except we got a little bit less science. When you're in an emergency room in a major urban hospital and people are coming in fast and furious and you have to diagnose them and figure out what's the right thing, you do the very best you can. But they're not always right. And all the studies of medicine show that doctors in emergency rooms make the wrong decision a lot of the time. We don't shut down those hospitals. We just try to make them better so that they get it right more of the time. That's what we have to do. We have to constantly look at our mistakes and our failures, and we have to constantly try to do what they do in medicine, which is sit around in a circle, figure out what went wrong, or what they do when it comes to aviation. The plane crashed. The plane almost crashed. How do we prevent this next time? What were the points where we could have made different decisions? That's what we have to do, and that is actually part of our agenda moving forward into a next term.
In 2025, WURD held more than 50 live broadcasts out in the community. If you were outside this year, there's a good chance you saw WURD. We were everywhere. Entrepreneurship events, community forums, pride celebrations, HBCU athletic events, the Million Man March anniversary, O'Doon Day, the Roots Picnic, the Dell Music Center, and more. WURD Radio is in the community more than any other radio station in Philadelphia. This year, we were also the first media outlet to broadcast the annual reenactment of the 1985 MOVE bombing. Here are James Peterson and Brother Shamari reflecting on that moment during a special live broadcast commemorating the incident's 40th anniversary.
Welcome back to MOVE, the city's open wound, 40 years later, a special broadcast honoring the 40th anniversary of the MOVE bombing with my good brother, the Brother Shamari, and myself, Dr. James Peterson, live here on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. Brother Shamari, so much to discuss. I have so many thoughts and emotions going through my mind. I'll take a comment from Facebook first and ask you to respond to it. Zen says, to me, and he's talking about the program we just listened to, he's saying, to me, it sounds worse listening to this today than when it happened. Wow. This is painful.
Yeah. Yes, because I think the details, when you really understand the details and hear it, you just understand, there's a movement, they call it Black Lives Matter. And what you begin to understand is that they don't in this culture, right? And when you really begin to understand, you don't accidentally have 10,000 rounds of ammunition on site.
22, 50 caliber guns.
Right. You don't accidentally have a C4 weaponized helicopter. So the intentionality, which is, let's use a legal term, the premeditation for the murder. And you got to remember, they were there. They were there to serve warrants. Some were eviction notices, warrants for technical violations of parole and other things. Why you need 600 plus police officers and I think that we've let the story become so normalized that we don't really understand how ridiculously absurd and intentional that was, and nobody ever paid a price for it. Nobody ever was held accountable in any way. No
police officer, no city official, no fire person,
right,
ever indicted, taken to trial, nothing.
Right.
For the meanwhile, Ramona Africa arrested and did 7 years in the immediate aftermath.
Yes.
Just for surviving this.
And one of the things I want to challenge, and I get in trouble with this with a lot of my people in my circles and all, but I'm like, I was away. I was 19. I was at Morehouse. It was during the summer. I was on my way to an internship in Boston. And I remember the four of us, because we went down together as graduates from Central who ended up at Morehouse. And I remember the four of us in the dorm room, like literally looking at this on TV. Like, is this happening? Like I had that whole summer, everywhere I went, when people heard I was from Philly, like it just became an interrogation kind of thing.
Right.
For which I have no answers, right? But but the thing for me that's always struck me is that the narrative has become so simplified. And we say, May 13th, 1985, that's the day that the black mayor bombed the black people.
You don't like that narrative. You think that's too reductive.
Very much so. I mean, the microcosm of that may be factual. I would contend that it's not.
Say more, bro. Let's break it down. A little bit. I mean, I think that oftentimes when people will look for a shorthand to try to refer to and process the hardest parts of our history.
If you've been listening to the narrative, though, even the way people say it now has changed, because like even today when you heard this, you talk about you hear people intentionally say the police force dropped the bomb. That's who dropped the bomb.
So you're not exonerating Mayor Wilson.
Not
you're
at
just
all.
saying that there's something about this that's wrong with hanging around his
neck.
I've
said to him forever, you have a lot to be accountable for. Probably on top of this is cowardice. You tried to flex like you were running a city and an operation that you got punked that day. And you getting punked that day cost 11 people their lives. And I told him, you're gonna grapple with that till you go to your grave, because you're always gonna have to ask yourself, what would have happened if I showed up? If I didn't stand down like I was ordered to stand down, what could have gone differently had I showed up and said no? Because see, I went to Howard. I was front door security in 1989 when the National Guard was threatening to storm the administration building during the takeover. I know Mayor Barry told them not on my watch. I didn't know that then, but when I see people write histories
Brother
now,
Smart, just to be clear, Marion Barry in the history of Black mayors is one of the most popular, one of the most people-supported mayors in the history,
despite all of his
because
people
and
when you realize that day that they were conspiring about storming the front door of the building. By the way, that's where I was posted, and I was just some dumb student who just said, "Okay, I ain't got nothing else to do. I show up."
Yes,
I wasn't a part of NEA Force. I wasn't part of the plan. I just showed up because I was on my way out anyway.
Right,
it didn't matter.
But do you think that former Mayor Wilson Good could have made that kind of intervention? I don't think he had enough people to make that kind of intervention.
I think at the end of the day, as a man who flexed about his power the next day, I think you got to grapple with that.
WURD always brings conversations that focus on how issues impact Black people specifically, from environmental injustice to health disparities to culture and creativity. Our podcast and interview series, Exonerated, looked closely at wrongful convictions and what delayed justice means for those falsely accused. You can listen to Exonerated on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Up next are Jelani Cobb, Dr. Uche Blackstock, comedian Lunel, and Sherelle Dorsey on the issues that mattered and the ones everyone was talking about in 2025. First is Sherry Shepard, star of Tyler Perry's Straw, on being in a movie about managing stress.
And I stepped out, I quit my job. Everybody said, Sherry, you just about gonna get this money from the Christmas club and the pension. And I stepped out on faith. And I think maybe 20 days later, I booked Everybody Loves Raymond. And I started doing stand-up. And it wasn't all roses and everything. I got evicted from that apartment. I was staying on people's couches, riding the bus at all hours of the night just to sleep. I booked another job. Had to stay with my girlfriend in the jungle in LA where they filmed Training Day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was rough. It was rough, but it was because of choices that I had made where I had to get better with my money, and going to jail had to not be normalized with me. But that was when I said, I'm not going to have a plan B. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this work because I love making people laugh. At the time, my mother was sick with diabetes and she passed away when I was, 23, I think, 22, when she was 41 years old. So I was taking care of her at the same time. But that was my outlet, stand-up comedy. And to be able to make people laugh when I was dealing with family members on drugs and my mom dying, that was my, just my place, my safe place. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, I love making people laugh.
So you and I have talked about Sinners offline. I still don't want to spoil it for folks, even though I think that it's been enough time for people to see it, right?
If you haven't seen it, that's on you. That's really on you.
It is.
You have plenty of time.
You have plenty of time to see it at this point. It is coming back into IMAX tomorrow. Yeah. For about a week. So it's worth it to say that. But Jelani, you had a chance to speak with Ryan Coogler before the film dropped. Do you mind sharing a little bit of your insights from that?
He lands with Sinners, which is a wildly original film. Very different. If you tell somebody a movie is about the blues, Christianity, and vampires, they're going to be like, yeah, that's going to suck. That's just generally what people are going to say.
Right.
But he puts together this incredible narrative that is sifting through all of these questions of identity and history and loss and legacy and the dynamic impact of the blues in American life and global culture, really. And at the same time, he's grappling with his own family history in Mississippi.
Dr. Uche Blackstock is a New York Times bestselling author and one of Time's 100 most influential people in global health to discuss her new book, Legacy.
Yeah, and I think when we look at, especially for Black patients, for us to receive quality care, because racism is so deeply embedded in every aspect of this country, when we get care by Black physicians, it's better care. We call it racially concordant care when the clinician and the patient are the same race. And racial concordance in the care of Black patients is critical. I even mentioned in the book that even when caring for infants that were just born, that even Black neonatologists had a higher survival rate than white neonatologists. Black babies were more likely to survive when taken care of by Black neonatologists.
Wow.
So I think, of course, we see in other disciplines what happens when there is lack of our representation. But in health, I feel like, it's literally a matter of life and death.
But we are honored to have the one, the only comedic genius here in the studio on Evening Words, Miss Lunell. Our last lightning round question. If you had to stay in one place for 24 hours, would you stay at the White House or at a Diddy party?
Diddy for sure. I mean, they got drugs, they got alcohol.
Baby oil.
Ketamine. I'd rather be there than at the White House unless Obama was there.
Ooh, I know.
If Obama was there, then I'd gladly be at the White House.
Have you ever met Obama before?
No. I know people who know him and Michelle, though. If I ever meet Michelle, I'm probably just going to break down and cry. I won't even be able to talk. It used to be Oprah, but it's Michelle.
Wow.
By the way, has anybody seen Stedman? Okay, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both and, right? I think that the sustainability conversation has gone through many different forms, right? We had this emergence of like corporate sustainability or corporate social responsibility, environmentalism, protectionism, what have you. And as you know, we're really in a climate right now, no pun intended. I was going to say, we're like, we're climate or we're language, is being vilified. And so, we're going to be going through another sort of, a change in terms of how we talk about this. But this movement around sustainability and finding more innovative ways to be kinder to the planet and also to how we experience our environment and how that impacts our health, especially in communities of color when it relates to where we live, what we're exposed to, the kind of food we have access to or not, whether or not, we are stationed near freeways and highways, right? Our housing, what kind of building materials are used. All of these things are factors in our everyday life. And sometimes the idea of sustainability, or I know we'll be diving into more environmental justice, it has many different names. It could be health equity, right? It can be food justice, public safety, affordable housing. All of these things have an environmental bent to them. And so I want us to expand our understanding of sustainability and understand it's a very holistic human rights, human justice conversation.
Thank you to our listeners, our supporters, our sponsors, everyone who attended an event, reads our newsletter, listens online, reads our articles, and shows up for this work. A special thank you to everyone who helped WURD exceed our June listener support goal, raising more than $80,000. Every one of those dollars helps make conversations like the ones you've just heard possible. As we head into 2026, if you value independent media and the kind of work you heard today, we hope you'll continue to support WURD. Go to wordradio.com/support to make a contribution today.